Liberal candidate Mark Carney launched his campaign in Edmonton on Thursday by waging war against the free press. I was denied access to the premises and asked to leave for simply attending and perhaps being guilty by association. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith went to war against Canada's proposed defense against the tariffs, along with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's and the other premiers' response to them. The Alberta government will also implement a policy it initially passed through legislation in May, a program which will have 24/7 ankle bracelet monitoring with GPS for repeat offenders out on bail to address the Liberal NDP's catch and release policy. All of this and more on this week's episode of the Alberta Roundup. I'm your host, Isaac Lamoureux, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you. I know you're dying to hear about the Carney event, so I'll take you through my experience of what happened now. So as some of you may know, Mark Carney announced his leadership campaign on Thursday in Edmonton, and the campaign kicked off at 12:30 p.m. at Laurier Heights Community League. I was about 5 minutes late because I was recording another show right before the event, and when I arrived, there was hardly parking within a few blocks of the Community League. And as I walked closer, I saw a line of at least like 100 people, so I thought to myself, wow, a lot of people are here to support Carney. I had previously emailed the event organizers at 8 a.m. that morning to request media access, but received no reply. So hoping to figure out a way to skip the line as media, I tried to find something that would suggest the possibility, but there seemed to be no such mechanism and the doors weren't even open. So eventually, Liberal MP George Chahal came out to address the line, and he said, sorry for the delay, but we're just waiting for the police to come and that things would get handled and get moving once they arrived. So I thought it was compelling that the police would need to be at the event for it to proceed, but perhaps this was standard practice at a federal event of the sort. A minute or two later, I saw the counter signals Cian Bexty being escorted out by the police. With him was independent journalist Mocha Bezergan, but he was recording him, so I wasn't sure if he was being escorted out as well or just documenting what was happening. And the police escort created a chasm, and nobody was near the two journalists, except me, of course. As they got into their car, I crept closer, hoping to ask them what happened, but before I had the chance, the police started questioning me. I was just standing there. They asked me if I was with them, and they asked me all these other questions. I told them I wasn't with them. I gave them my name, and I told them who I worked for, which was, of course, True North. And then the policewoman who was questioning me, she was clearly messaging the organizer, and a minute or two later, she came up to me and she said, "You're not welcome here and you need to leave." I asked why. I tried to reason with her and I was nothing but friendly to her, but she wouldn't tell me much. She just said that the organizers of the event did not want me there and that it was a private event, so I needed to leave. She kept repeating that. This is a private event. You can't be here. Okay. Western Standard journalist James Snell was also denied access to the event. Cian Bexty, he took various videos of the event, and in the following clip, you'll actually see the two policemen that I spoke with as well. Here it is.
You guys were You've been advised you have to leave?
By nobody who's identifying themselves. They're just a random dude came up and said that this fellow as well. We're just if we have to leave, I'm happy to leave. But nobody from whoever's booked this has told us that they're actually an authority figure. Just people that I think don't like us. So.
Okay, you are trespassing, so you need to leave the property.
Okay. All right.
Do you want to come out this way so you're not walking in front of all of them?
I don't. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to.
My partner.
Yep.
They're going to come this way with us?
Okay.
What's your position in the campaign? No. Why time to go?
Right, they're going to come through here. Yeah.
Go this way with these guys.
Hi, George. Have you stolen anything lately?
Back this way? Okay, sorry, we're actually going to go with this
Oh.
way.
This way, sir. This way.
This is the weirdest I've ever been treated.
If you want to keep filming, you're welcome to, but you're going to have to be off the community property.
We'll have to pick up our car, and is that okay?
Where is it?
It's just in the parking lot. We can drive, but thank you.
No, but like.
Oh, sure, yeah. So the entire community center has trespassed us, or was it the campaign?
It's the private event.
Yeah, the private event.
Okay, but they haven't booked this like playground.
No, but it is part of the property, so we're going to get you to be off the property.
Okay.
You're free to film from there, but
Sure, yeah. Well, thanks for being so professional about this. It's strange treatment from someone who wants to be the Prime Minister of this country.
where's your
Just right up ahead here.
Oh.
And here's another video of Snell showcasing some journalism students also not getting let in. Can you believe it? I mean, I assume the journalism students aren't legacy media enough for Carney. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Just watch this here.
So now we have journalism students trying to get in, great young people looking to make a start in media, and it appears they're being restricted. So hopefully they will be allowed in, these great young people.
So let me know what you guys think of Carney launching his campaign by banning independent media from even attending. I mean, I can hardly even get through the sentence. It's such a ridiculous stance. I never would have thought that waging war on free press and independent media would be a way to kickstart your campaign. And also, do you think anything negative will result of this, or is this just business as usual for the Liberals? Yeah, that was fun. I wish we could start every episode with story time, but hopping into the news from Alberta this week, as you can imagine, President-elect Donald Trump's tariffs have dominated the headlines, and Smith has taken a surprising stance against not only the tariffs, but Trudeau and even the other premiers. So following her meeting with President-elect Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, which was thanks to an invite from Shark Tank star and her recent business partner, Kevin O'Leary, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith came back with the slightly surprising news that the proposed tariffs were imminent. I honestly thought Smith would return from her meeting with Trump with better news, but less surprisingly, she said that Canada would have to leverage its energy muscle to avoid the tariffs, or to deal with them once they're in place. Smith said that because of Trudeau's announced resignation, she's actually been speaking with U.S. administration independently. She reiterated that this was the very reason she was calling for an immediate election. Then Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said that, quote, everything's on the table when asked about cutting off energy supply to the United States. Smith said a few things in response to this. Firstly, that oil and gas is under provincial jurisdiction, and this would not be happening. She also suggested that Joly pick up a map to look at where the Enbridge Line 5 travels. If supply to the United States were cut off, so too would supply to Ontario and Quebec. Smith said, quote, you should never, ever threaten something you can't do. She added, quote, there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on, and we cannot do anything that harms Canadians in any substantial way. Smith also said she does not expect Alberta to be granted any tariff exemptions despite being an energy exporting behemoth. Smith will be attending Trump's inauguration in person on January 20th, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, Trudeau is having his last cabinet retreat in Quebec on the same day Trump is sworn in. So it gets even more surprising with this next bit about Smith. And I mean, this one took me by complete shock. So a few days after the previously mentioned statements, Trudeau and the premiers met on Wednesday. Smith was attending the conference virtually, and she did not attend the closing press conference. Following the conference, all of the premiers and the Prime Minister released a joint statement of the Canada-United States relationship. Well, not exactly all of them. At the bottom of the statement, it reads, quote, the government of Alberta did not approve the joint statement between the government of Canada and the Council of the Federation. I mean, wow. And in case you've forgotten, the Council of the Federation is Canada's premiers. So this means that Smith opposed all of the premiers and the Prime Minister. Their joint statement had various quotes that touched on several things like the border issues and Canada reaching its 2% NATO spending target as soon as possible, but it didn't say anything really that shocking that Smith would have to oppose it, so that was really surprising. But she did go on to release her own statement. She said, quote, federal government officials continue to publicly and privately float the idea of cutting off energy supply to the U.S. and imposing export tariffs on Alberta energy and other products to the United States. Until these threats cease, Alberta will not be able to fully support the federal government's plan in dealing with the threatened tariffs. Smith said that Alberta will not agree to export tariffs on energy or any product and will not support banning these products. She said she would do anything in her power to protect Albertans from such destructive federal policies. She added that the whole country should use the threat as an opportunity to fix Canada's, quote, misguided direction and start supporting infrastructure projects that support oil and gas. She concluded by saying, quote, I will be traveling to Washington, D.C. this week for the inauguration, and will be returning to the United States several times over the coming months to meet with U.S. lawmakers and officials to continue to make the case against the imposition of tariffs on Canadian products and to strengthen and grow the trading relationship between our two great and independent nations. Let me know in the comments what you think about Smith standing up not only to Trudeau, but now against all the other premiers. So sticking with provincial news, the Alberta government has taken its next step in fighting Canada's catch-and-release bail system that has let high-risk and repeat offenders roam free. This is by implementing the provincial ankle bracelet electronic monitoring program, which came on Wednesday. The program will allow offenders and accused who are deemed a public safety risk to be subject to court-ordered 24/7 electronic monitoring by Alberta Correctional Services. Alberta Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis said, quote, "Ottawa's Bill C-75 has broken the bail system. High-risk offenders pose a significant risk to public safety and require an enhanced supervision in the community." He added, quote, "Ankle bracelet electronic monitoring is another tool in the toolbox for courts to consider when determining sentencing or bail conditions, helping us combat rising crime and create safer Alberta communities." You might remember that Canada's provincial and territorial premiers previously called on the federal government to reform the bail system following various murders by those out on bail. Then, the federal government shifted the blame to the provinces, saying it was up to them to fix the crime issues caused by the catch-and-release bail system. The Alberta government said ankle bracelet monitoring will help secure offender-restricted areas such as victims' residences, places of employment, and other areas deemed off-limits by an accused's bail release conditions. The previous system saw probation officers monitor high-risk individuals only during regular business hours and did not include GPS monitoring. Alberta's Justice Minister Mickey Amory repeated the call for bail reform. He said, quote, "Alberta's government continues to call for federal bail and sentencing reform to stop violent criminals from re-entering our communities." The Alberta government allocated $2.8 million to cover the implementation costs for the 2024-25 fiscal year. Alberta previously released a provincial police force plan and stricter penalties for repeat offenders. Bill 11, which was part of the previous announcement, provides the legislative amendments to establish the ankle monitoring program for violent and sexual offenders out on bail. The ankle bracelet monitoring program is part of the Alberta United Conservative Party's Safe Streets Action Plan. The plan was put forward in their 2023 election campaign and has various measures to increase public safety. So that wraps up our stories for this week. I'm really looking forward to the comments this week on the questions that I've raised. But bringing it back to last week's comments, let's hop in to the comment roundup. The first comment I'll highlight from last week comes from @Bumpsy58, who said, quote, "Advances in technology should be the primary focus. In the meantime, hybrids are a good path. Fully electric cars are not suitable for Canadian geography and climate. Or for that matter, the electrical grid cannot sustain that surge in power usage." Yeah, I decided to highlight this because of how closely it aligns with what Energy Minister Brian Jean said when I interviewed him. Essentially, he said that the Liberals are trying to supersede technology with emissions reduction goals that will obliterate Canada's economy and job market. Whereas if they were a bit more patient, technology would catch up and emissions reduction would follow suit. And time is not of the essence. We've seen research showing that carbon taxes and emissions reductions tactics of the like do little to nothing to reduce emissions, and in Canada's case, even increase emissions. On top of that, Canada's impact on global emissions is negligible at best, and in reality, we could have more of an effect by being pro-energy and supplying our responsible clean energy over that of dictatorships from their coal plants. The next comment comes from @ThomasHerman12, who said, quote, "Alberta will be both stronger and have greater freedom as a U.S. state. We would have to start as a territory, but statehood would be achieved swiftly. The American Constitution is better than the Canadian one by a country mile. Alberta 51. Yeah, Thomas, so I decided to highlight your comment, but it could have been any number of comments from the last video of people suggesting that Alberta separate from Canada and become the 51st state to bolster our economy, security, and other things. I wonder what this would result in for Albertans and how negatively the rest of the country would be affected without Alberta's oil and economy. In fact, I thought this was a widespread belief in Alberta, but a recent poll suggested otherwise. So a recent poll conducted by the Angus Reid Institute highlighted that 90% of Canadians do not want to become the 51st state. And okay, that's a pretty high number, but I thought Alberta would be an anomaly. And it was, but not to the extent I had imagined. Alberta favored separation the most. But still, only 18% of Albertans said that they would vote for Canada to become the 51st state in a referendum. This was the most among any province, but it was much lower than I expected. Let me know what you think. The last comment comes from Vinny379L4, who said, quote, "Never again with NDP in Alberta. Never forget what Notley did to this province." Yeah, this is a sentiment I've highlighted before, but something I think Albertans who lived here during the NDP's reign will never forget. That being the economic ruin that the Alberta NDP put the province in, and how much poorer everyone was during their tenure and thereafter. However, as I've previously mentioned with immigration, there are a lot of new Albertans who may not have lived here during the NDP's rule, and so they may not have the same strong-held opinions as so many Albertans do. Before Rachel Notley took office in 2015, Conservatives in Alberta had held office for 44 years straight. Given how poorly the NDP's recent reign was in Alberta and how vehemently rural Alberta is against the Alberta NDP, I was meaning to ask you guys if you think there will be another multi-decade rule of Conservatives in Alberta, or what will end up knocking them out of office eventually, if anything. That wraps up our comment roundup in this week's show. My name's Isaac Lamoureux, your host of the Alberta Roundup. Have a great weekend. Thank you and God bless. May Alberta prosper, strong and free.